Hi and welcome to this first tutorial where we will go through how to build your first Narratory app. And I will jump straight to it. Here on the Narratory.io we can go to the setup guide, and here we can see that in order to use Narratory you have one dependency, which is Node and NPM. It always comes bundled. And we recommend a version of 10 at least for Node. And you also need a code editor, and our recommended choice is the Virtual Studio Code. But you could really use anything you want. And that said, we will jump to our terminal, and here we will install Narratory globally using npm install -g for global and Narratory. And now this will actually fail because we have to use super user if we have a Linux or a Mac system. So we can append it with sudo like that, and it's gonna work. If you're on Windows, it's gonna work even without the sudo prefix. And once it's done, we're gonna start by writing Narratory, and we can see that we have a few options available now through command line. And we're gonna start with a create command, which then creates a new agent. Alright, so Narratory create. And first we get to name our agent, and we can just call it test agent. For this tutorial. Second of all, we choose a template. So do we want to start with an empty template or with our start kit? And for this tutorial we will go with a start kit. Thirdly, language, English. And then it asks for my Narratory key. And this one is available on Narratory.io. If you sign in, your key is available in the dashboard. So you just paste that in here, press enter, and it's going to create your agent for you, as well as install all the dependencies that you need. And while this will take a few seconds, so we will head over to the setup guide again here and see what the next step is. Right, connecting a Dialogflow agent. So Dialogflow is this really competent NLU, natural language understanding tool from Google, and it's used under the hood in Narratory agents to basically parse what users say. And so we go to we sign in Dialogflow, and it's completely free to create an agent here. And I'll use this account. Go to console. And the first time you do this, you're not going to be met by this view. You're going to get the big button saying create your first agent. But since I have a few agents already, I'm going to end up here. And I will just, I think I press here on the arrow and then create new agent. Now, we did put in a name here called test agent, and it doesn't have to be the same, but it's a good practice to use the same name. And default language has to match the one we picked in Narratory, so English is good. And we're going to allow it to create a new Google project for us. Press create, and this is also going to take a few seconds, so we can jump back to terminal and see that now it's completed here. And it also says, it gives a few tips here that inside the directory you can run a few commands. And here, more importantly, it says paste in your Google credentials for your Dialogflow project in Google credentials.json. Follow the guide at blah 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 blah. So this is exactly what we're doing now. I just jumped ahead a bit. Over again at Dialogflow, we can see that now our agent is created here, but it's still setting up down here, so we will just give it another minute. Here we can move into this test agent folder and open this up in our code editor. So this is again Virtual Studio Code. And here we see that the project came with a few, since we picked the start kit, it actually comes with a small dialog that you can use to test your agent right away. So remember that we pasted in the Narratory credentials here in the tutorial. We also provided a language. So the credentials go into this file here. The Google credentials that we're going to get from Dialogflow, we're going to paste in this file, Google credentials. And in the source folder here, we have this agent that was created for us. Starting off with the agent file, this is what ties your agent together. So here we see that we gave the agent a name. It goes here, we gave it a language, and there's a few other things that we will walk over in a minute. And here you can also see that the Narratory key and the Google credentials, which is giving an error here because it's actually missing properties, which makes sense because we haven't added it yet. But these two files are actually imported here from using this TypeScript or JavaScript syntax from these two files here, over here. Now let's head over to Dialogflow again. And now we can see that it's not loading anymore, so we're done here creating the agent, and it created two intents for us. Now, we don't really have to know so much about Dialogflow to use Narratory, but basically what Narratory is going to do is to create everything you need in Dialogflow for you. And for it to do that, we need to give Narratory access to this agent that we just created. And we will do that by going to Settings. And, well, this is interesting. The service account here. Alright, okay, it's the first time you're accessing this agent. Agent is ready to use. Well, okay, so maybe we are just in time. Right, so here, now we see that the Google project has a service account linked already. And it also has a project ID. So this is the Google project. So every Dialogflow agent has a one-to-one connection to a Google project. So you can never have more than one Dialogflow agent for each Google project. What you do is you press this link here, and then you're taken to the Google Cloud platform, where the only thing we need to do here is to create a service account, which we do up here. And we give it a name. Narratory is a good suggestion, but it doesn't really matter. Second step, we have to pick a role. And in order for Narratory to work with Dialogflow, we have to give it the role Dialogflow API admin. Like that. Continue, and then finally we have to create a key. And this key is of type JSON. We press create, and finally we open this up. Oops, let's open the file instead. So this is how it looks. It's a JSON with a bunch of things in. We take the whole thing and paste it into this Google credentials file that we had in our app folder. And now we don't actually, we won't go through these files in this tutorial, but this is the sample dialog that we created since we picked the starter kit. But what we will do now is that we will head over to the terminal and we will start the agent. We will test it directly here in the terminal. So we do that by Narratory start, you can see up here that what it does is that it builds and then starts an interactive chat with the agent. And first time it's going to take a few seconds to do this, but it should really be quite quick. So now the agent is created, and we can see that it has started a chat session with the agent here. Hi there, have we met before? Well, we actually have. Really, do you remember when? No, I don't. I see. Okay, so who's your favorite virtual assistant? Well, I like Siri. We tried building an app for Siri. No, I haven't. So that's our little sample dialogue, and so that's all it took to have a working chatbot up and running. And by now you could actually deploy this if you wanted to Google Actions if you want, or even put it on your website. What we will do is we will now do a quick edit in one of the files just to simulate how quick it is to do updates to your bot. So what we will do is we will head over to the narrative file, and the narrative in Narratory. So these two terms are quite similar, and there's a reason for that. So in Narratory, the narrative is the main building block of a chatbot. So the narrative is basically the red thread through the interaction, and it's typically a bot-driven, the bot-driven part of the interaction. So in the dialogue we had with in the terminal here, we can see that the bot was actually leading the dialogue by asking questions and then commenting on the answers that the users gave. And this is typically a good way to structure your chatbots. So what happened was that the bot started saying, "Hi there, have we met before?" So these two phrases, they come from the top here in the narrative file, where we have a greeting, which has three alternatives here. So it's going to pick one of them, and it did. And then it's going to ask this question, have we met before? So this is actually, so every time there's a bot here, that means that it's a bot turn. So bot turns and user turns are the main building blocks in Narratory. And basically the bot will speak until you open up for the user to speak, and this is when you give the user the turn. That's why it's called user turn and bot turn. So in this case, the bot asks, have we met before? And then here we have two user turns that are defined in line. And what do we mean with in line? Well, we could have had this defined somewhere else. We could have had it defined, for example, here. We could have called it answer yes, which might not be a fantastic name. And it would be of type user turn, and then it would look like that. So we could have had it defined like that, but one of the good things, especially in the beginning when you build your bot, is to be able to get a good overview of your interaction. In those, and for that reason, it might be easier to get started and to build your dialogue in this nested way. So you can kind of read it from, well, first of all, from top to bottom, but also from left to right. So on this question, you see that there's this indent here. And then if you say yes, so yes is then the intent here of this first user turn. So if the user says something that maps to a yes, and we will walk through what that means in a later tutorial. But then the bot will reply, oh really, do you remember when? And then since this is a question as well, we hand over the turn again to the user. And this time, we don't really care what the user says. So that's why it says here intent anything. So no matter what the user replies, the bot will say either interesting or I see. And if we go back to the terminal, we can see that this is exactly what happened here. The bot asks, whoops. The bot asked, do you remember when? And we said, no, I don't. And the bot said, I see, and then moved on. So this is another feature of Narratory, that once it's done executing a bot turn, which it did here, it's going to move to the next bot turn in line, which was this question about who the favorite virtual assistant was. And then does the system automatically know this depending on the order? Well, no, it's not really that smart. So the order that these bot turns are lined up in the narrative is actually defined in the bottom here. So here you can see that you have references to these bot turns, so you can actually follow them here and you can end up over here. Similarly, if you wonder what this yes is, you can follow the link here to see that these are the examples for the yes intent. Now we will walk through intents in a later tutorial, but for now we can just show you how you can do an update. So instead of these greetings, we will add another greeting, howdy, and how do you then upload this to your bot? Well, you say then Narratory start, or you could use build, which so the start command actually does a build and a chat for you, but you could also run these commands separately. So if I run the build now, in a few seconds I can run chat, and now you can see that it says howdy instead of the previous greetings. And you might now be curious to what actually happened in Dialog flow. Well, we can actually head over to Dialog flow here, and we're gonna have to refresh, and then we can see that there's a bunch of things created for us here, and yeah, so that's one of the benefits, that you don't really have to navigate that interface. You can work in your text editor instead. There are pros and cons of both approaches, and we will walk through those in later tutorials as well. So that actually concludes this tutorial, so thank you so much.